Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for getting vaccinated and coming out in person for this event. So appreciate it. My name is Chanel Riley. I'm an editor at Variety. I am so pleased to welcome you to this finale screening of The Girl from Plainville. You got to see this before anyone else, so feel very special. Please join me in welcoming tonight's guests who brought this timely, essential story to the screen. I want to start with the actor who plays David Carter. Please welcome Kai Lennox. The actress who plays Gail Carter, Cara Buono, sorry. The actor who stars as Lynn Roy, Chloe Sevigny. The actor who portrays Conrad Roy, Colton Ryan. Co-showrunner, executive producer, and director. Please welcome Liz Hannah. And finally, the actress who brings Michelle Carter to startling life. She's also an executive producer on the series. Please welcome Elle Fanning. Thank you all so much for being here. This is such a stunning, like I said, timely series. On a superficial note, this is the best dressed cast I've ever seen. All of you. Yeah, it's kind of intimidating. We're here with an audience of your peers, people who are fellow writers, actors, directors. I actually always like to start by asking, where did it all start for you? What was your very first job in this industry? You know, did you begin as a production assistant? Did you have, one line on a local commercial? What was the first thing? And let's start with Kai.
Yes, I paid my dues doing art department work.
Really?
I drove trucks and moved furniture and slept really well at the end of a day. And then, slowly but surely worked my way into an acting job. And then the rest is history.
Were you using that to get acting jobs, or just?
Yeah. I was, just like, dropping a prop on a stage and.
Did you do a bit as you dropped the prop?
Yeah. Pratfalls usually were the thing that did it. It was always the hook.
Cara, what about for you?
Gosh, I was so bored growing up in the Bronx, hanging out at this candy store, Alabals. Said I wanted to be an actress. There was a trade paper. I said I'm going to be an actress, and I used to go on open calls. I had no idea what I was doing. Like I got a headshot from the local wedding photographer. I saved up all my money, and I would go on these open calls, not knowing what I was doing. And I got my first. Well, I don't know if it called it a first job, but I was an extra in an NYU student film. And they needed ballet dancers, and I lied and said I took a few ballet classes. I'm like, I can be your ballet dancer. And then I was the last Massengale douche girl.
Did you say the last girl?
I was the. Do you remember the Massengale douche commercial?
Yeah.
Yes, I was the last. I did the last one.
You were the final girl.
Thank you for your contribution.
Chloe,
Thank you.
Well, I actually did some professional acting as a child, and my first paid gig was a Voltron commercial. I don't know if it was like the poor man's Transformer. And I was a 7-year-old. It was the pink lion princess. And I said, "Go, Voltron Force!" That was my first line.
My first gig was I played a tree and a door frame in a highly conceptual version of a little night music in a barn in New Hampshire. And where your mind goes when you stand and hold a door frame, I guess a high concept, it's very dark.
Wait, this sounds like it could have been amazing or terrible.
I won't comment on that.
I was an intern in New York in production. This is like the boring answer. I'm a writer. I was an intern in New York in production on a movie called Reign Over Me with Adam Sandler and Chris Rock. And then I was an intern on Spider-Man 3 for about 2 weeks before I got fired, which I really liked to tell Amy Pascal after she got the post.
Elle, for you?
Yeah, well, for me, obviously my sister started before I did, and her first movie, I guess, was technically mine too, because it was I Am Sam, and she was 6, which made me 2, and I was on set with my mom, and I would visit a lot, but they needed someone for like a flashback sequence, and so all I had to do, they asked me, because I looked a lot like her, so they put me in the outfit, and I swang on the swing with Sean Penn and had to like lay in the grass, and that was it. I don't remember much.
At the age of 2.
Yes.
But she really struggled before that. And your first gig out of the gate is with Sean Penn, no big deal.
Right.
Well, before this, she was also driving trucks for the art department.
Yeah, great
1.5. Yeah.
Great co-pilot.
Well, again, congratulations on really a stunning series that told me a story I thought I knew, and it turns out I knew virtually nothing. And I'm curious for each of you, when this project came its way to you, what did you know about Michelle Carter or this story, or what did you think you knew, and what attracted you to the project? We'll start with Elle.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think I have to do the math correctly, but when the court case, was televised and in the media, I think I was around 19, so I would, just graduated from high school, and obviously, it was just so splashed across the news all the time, and but it was a very one-dimensional view of it. They really painted it as, Michelle was kind of this manipulator, Black Widow, and Conrad was very, the victim in this, which he very much was, but at the same time, we didn't really get to learn anything about, this young man's life or his backstory or who he was. He was just strictly the victim. And I guess I was aware just because these were kids that were my age and, dealing with technology and growing up in the age of technology, which I very much was and could relate to. And I think we're all still trying to navigate that world and kind of the false intimacy that creates, and that instant gratification of when you get a text and that feeling. So I was aware, but it wasn't until really Patrick McManus and
Shout out
Jesse
to
Barron.
Shout out to Patrick, who couldn't be here tonight. So
Co-showrunner.
yeah, we got to shout him out.
Yeah, he would like that. But it was really, their idea to adapt Jesse Barron's article from Esquire, and after reading the article and watching Erin Lee Carr, who's also a producer with Jesse, her documentary on HBO, I guess I saw the story not in a different light, but it was just more, kind of zoomed out. It was this unbiased perspective and a bit more three-dimensional, and I started to understand a bit more where the characters were coming from. But I was, it was definitely, I was tentative about signing on, honestly, because these, families are still alive and a life was lost and ended in the most tragic way imaginable. So I wanted to, make sure that everyone was kind of not wanting to sensationalize or romanticize a story, which easily I think can be done. And luckily we were all so on the same page with that every day, and the great responsibility that came with telling the story,
Liz, what about for you? Do you remember this case as it was happening?
I mean, I did, but I would agree with Al in that I really just remembered the headlines, and I frankly took it, I think, as most people did, and believed what they were saying, which was she was this Black Widow, she was out for selfish reasons and all of these things, and I didn't dig any deeper. And when Patrick and Elle and Brittany Conward, shout out our other executive producer who's over here, applause for Brittany. Brittany literally kept it all together, so it's very important. She keeps our lives together. I was just as hesitant. I think that was what made it interesting to lean in, was that nobody was immediately jumping. Everyone was very thoughtful and considering if we wanted to do this, and if we did, how. So I did the same. I read the article and watched the documentary, but it really wasn't until I met with Patrick and we had a long conversation about how we would do this, and that we were not interested in sensationalizing in any way, that we were interested in digging deeper and focusing not just on, I think, the story that isn't fully explored or hasn't had the opportunity to be fully explored about Michelle, but about Conrad as well. I think he very much was a byline in this. He was pushed aside as the end result of a horrific series of events, and his tragedy is just that, is tragic, but he also had a life before that, and so bringing that to the forefront was important, and showing the families and just the complexity of mental health. There was a real opportunity here, I think, to have that conversation. So, yeah.
And I just can't even imagine, Colton, the responsibility you must have felt taking on this role. What did you know about Conrad going in? And I imagine you learned so much.
Yeah. Well, when I started this, I knew the premise, but I remember being so floored by To Toot Your Horn when it showed up in my email. And
Keep going.
Am I getting the Venmo soon, or what is it?
I sent you a check. It's a check.
It's a check. It's an email. Okay. No, really, to toot your horn. I mean, the log line was so emotional and three-dimensional and consequential. That was really the part that made it. I didn't even associate it with the case that I had known. This hollow, sensational thing. I didn't even, and that's when I was like, oh, I have to be a part. And when I eventually got the part, the first thing I did was Google, of course, his name. And he has a Wikipedia page, but it's really not his own. It is still titled to this day, The Death of Conrad Roy III. And it still really breaks my heart. I mean, I think you and I could agree, I would not want to be remembered that way. And I think he still, to this day, deserves the grace of, as much as there was dark, there was such a balance of light and such love as much as heaviness. And so, yeah, I mean, I felt that weight, but also getting to know him was such a privilege that it felt very light itself. Playing it was very affirming.
Chloe, I want to know what attracted you to this project, but also working with this fantastic young actor. The scenes that you two share are just phenomenal, and I don't know if you can, I guess that's good acting to some degree. You create that chemistry, but it feels very real. I'd love to know where that came from.
Where does it come from? The magic of the out-of-body acting experience. It comes from good writing. It comes from great producers and showrunners and directors that also allow you just to act in the way that they allowed us in this show. I mean, there are certain showrunners and producers and shows we think where, it's very heightened, it's, play the stakes, what are the stakes, high stakes, and there was never once the word high stakes. So I felt very blessed that they just let us really sit with the scenes and with each other and have quiet moments where we could just look at each other and take each other in and really just communicate, even if it's not verbally. And so I think a lot of the magic of the show and the performances come from our great producers and directors and just the quality of the acting that they wanted to capture, and so it's a testament to them, not us. We didn't do anything.
Hard disagree.
And did you know anything about this story when this project found
I didn't. I'd seen photos of Michelle on tabloids, and I'd automatically be like, oh, that bitch, look how pretty. Yeah. So I automatically judged her and knew nothing. And then, there was interest in me for the role, and I watched the documentary, and I was very struck by Lynn and the forgiveness she found for Michelle, and how important it was for her that people hear her son's story and know more about her son and who he was, and he was a full person, and I just had so much respect for her, and I found her just very moving, and she had this quality, this spirituality, this earthiness, this humor. She was, it was everyone's like, oh, you're just playing another mom. I was like, yes, but moms are complicated individuals.
Moms are funny, everybody.
Moms are everything. It was the writing again. I read the first 3 scripts, I think, and I was just like, yeah, sign me up.
And I mentioned how well you two work together, and Colton, I would think one of the hardest acting jobs would just be playing it cool that Chloe Sevigny is playing your mom. I
I'm
mean,
still playing it right now. Don't give it away.
I mean, she's kind of legendary. Were you a little intimidated?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you know that. But the first scene we ever had together was this beautiful sequence in this diner in episode 3. And I remember I had a couple of days under my belt. But so I'm from New York. Chloe, everyone knows, is from New York. And,
Chloe is New York.
she is New York. She really is. And one of the finest talents of her generation. And I've been a fan forever. So coming up to this day, I was like, I think I played it pretty cool up to that point. I mean, Elle, you're amazing, but I was playing it pretty cool, and we worked. But when it came to that day, I also knew how, from my research, how special this relationship was between this boy and his mother, and I know that from the events that transpired, and also just from reading into the way he spoke about her, wrote about her. Their connection was just otherworldly. And so I just knew that we had to get it right. And I think we both felt that and both really leaned into it. And even though we don't share as many scenes together in the show, I think that's what makes it so effective. Because you really do, you feel this space, this emptiness. And yeah, I mean, that was hard to do while I was trying to play it cool.
You don't have to play it cool anymore.
Not anymore, no. Right?
Yeah, we went to a Knicks game the other night. We were like, chilling.
Jay chilling.
Karen and Kai, I feel in so many ways we get to see a side of a story that we never really hear about. And seeing, the parents of, we make all these assumptions about them, and to see them portrayed as fully realized, complex human characters is so fascinating. What did you know or think you knew about them going in?
Well, when I first heard about the project, I knew about the case, and I thought to myself, kind of why, why this now, why, and I didn't, of course I wanted a job, but I thought, I don't actually want to be part of this. My dad had just died a week before, and I thought, I want to do like Clifford the Big Red Dog or something like that kind of movie. And then I, read the scripts, and I was so blown away by the thoughtfulness of the complexity of the peeling away of the characters and revealing the tragedy for everybody. And for my character, she never gave interviews. There were no nothing to watch in the documentaries. So, we had talked about, who is this person and how do you create, and be respectful of a human being who's out there, whose life you're talking about, and just trying to figure out a way to approach the character in that way, and I think find the humanity and complexity in her, instead of, I would think like most of the audience, how I felt was like I have a preconceived notion. I'd like to think I'm better than that, but we all think, oh, who is this mom? Like, what did she do to like have a daughter who, would be complicit in this tragedy? And I think the writers did like a masterful job of trying to create this dynamic between the characters and finding those in the spaces where she fails to connect to her, you kind of see what transpired. So it's what we kind of imagined to depict the complexity of parenting in a digital age, particularly.
Because I'm sure a lot of people had opinions about the parents before knowing anything about them. And Kai, that might even include, you might have had your own opinions before getting this role.
Yeah, to be honest, when I first heard about the story, when it hit the headlines, it hit me in a way that was, I was mortified. As a father, I was just taken aback. I mean, it's unfathomable to think that something like this is possible, and we do our best as parents to protect our kids. And in the age of social media, where the job becomes so much more complex, and I just I distanced myself from that story when it first came out, and I knew only the sort of what the media had portrayed, a very black and white, this is, and it's a very tragic scenario. But when I did finally read the script, when this story came, I was struck by, like what Kara said so eloquently, that Liz and Patrick had really done such an incredible job at giving this family a level of they approached it with such compassion and empathy that I just felt like I just had to follow their lead, and that was it was a real honor to be able to take that opportunity. And
I'm guessing that there were discussions amongst the producers and Liz and everyone about the fact that you don't necessarily judge anyone. You tell the story, and you don't want like cardboard villains. Was that something that you knew going in from the start, kind of had to be a set rule?
Yeah, and I have to say the talk about the writing is so wonderful. Thank you guys. I can't accept it though, because the writers are actually here tonight. The writers and the support staff are here. And this goes to those conversations. We from the very first conversation Patrick and I ever had, Elle and I ever had, Brittany and I ever had about this show, it was whatever judgments that we may have had with the headlines of what we knew, that had no business being a part of this show. And that had no business being a part of the conversation of how to tell this story, because it wasn't our job as storytellers to relitigate it. We wanted to attempt empathy for each of the people involved and the characters involved, and to present this story as accurately as possible. And as humanly possible with humanity. And truthfully, the writer's room, we had, let me tell you, writing a show about how bad technology is during a pandemic over Zoom was a very bizarre thing. And all of our writers here are like, you hated it, and I did. But we, on a daily basis, we remind each other. You can go down paths while you're breaking a story that may seem right, but isn't right. And I really think the writers' room were our guideposts and our mentors and teachers in maintaining that.
Elle, I remember when the very first photos dropped of you as Michelle, and I literally thought it was like, oh, that's a photo of Michelle Carter, and that's who Elle's playing, and then I realized it was you. It's amazing what eyebrows can do, isn't it? I'm curious first about the physical transformation, like how, if it took a while to sort of find that, how far you went and then sort of brought it back, but then also the emotional preparation to take on such a role.
Yeah, it's interesting. Erin is here tonight, who drew those eyebrows on. Yes, she's here. Erin and Jules and Mirren, Mirren did the costumes and Jules did the mini wigs for my side. And yeah, I mean, obviously that courtroom look of hers is kind of the one that people know most. I think what's really interesting, our story also, spans 7 years. So she really transforms, and when you look at photos of her younger, she really looks like different people in each photograph. It's so interesting. And kind of the evolution of her really becoming in that court, it's kind of like a shell of a person. The real Michelle Carter was voted most likely to brighten your day in school, ironically. But, I think you were talking about judgment and stuff, and when you're playing a character, you can't spend your time judging them. I think you don't have to like the choices that they make, but you ultimately have to try to understand where they ultimately ended up doing what they did. And obviously Michelle is still alive. I didn't talk with her or anything like that. So, and we had a lot of resources and people who, were around the case at the time, but at the same time, you don't know what's going on in someone's brain. I mean, I think the last episode, we were trying to figure out how to end this series, and I think kind of going into that fantasy element of seeing kind of what's inside her, that's when I really kind of figured her out, is that she kind of lives in this blurred line of, you know, fantasy and reality, and she kind of lives in between. And I think her obsession with Glee and, you know, The Fault in Our Stars, and like that is kind of when it clicked for me, because as an actor, I live in fantasy land all the time, you know, and you have to remind yourself to keep yourself grounded. But I think with Michelle, she was very isolated, very wanted to be liked, wanted the attention, and I think Glee and those that, you know, especially at the time, Glee's kind of a show for the outsider, you know, it is a show for, kind of creates a community for people who don't feel like they fit in. So it makes sense that she was, you know, really liked the show. And for me, that's when I could kind of wrap my head around her, or at least the character that we wanted to create, because at some point you can't mimic someone. You have to, of course, you want to get the physicality right, but you have to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, this is a character that is on our show that we're creating, you know. But yeah, the physical thing was that was a different thing, but you have to kind of work from the inside out, I guess.
What was it like the first time you saw yourself as Michelle?
Yeah, that was, we did have a lot of camera tests and things, a lot of camera tests, and Mirren, who did the costumes, she was just incredible with everyone, like just her specificity and attention to detail. And she back searched on the computer to find the exact clothing that she wore, so like from Ann Taylor Loft and Chico's, and like the exact print. So I was wearing those, and then obviously, you know, Erin, she put moles in the exact position that she had her moles in.
Self-tanner.
Yeah, a lot of self-tanner. Obviously, we had a lot of camera tests to figure out the eyebrow shape, and there's just so much went into all of that. And so you start to lose, you see yourself kind of chipping away in the mirror. You're like, okay, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. And I remember coming on the set that first day of the courtroom sequence, and it was like, and I think, you know, Hulu even said, they're like, can we get some photos of Michelle, or photos of Elle look as in the look? And we sent those photos, and like you said, they're like, no, we don't mean Michelle, we mean Elle.
Wow.
So they really did a great job, yeah. Yeah, they're like, no, not Michelle, that is me.
I literally thought, I was like, oh, they're opening with documentary footage, I get it.
It was so eerie that first courtroom day when she showed up, and the whole crew, every department, every grip, every electric, everyone was just like chill, and it was like, oh right, we are making this story. This is really like, it was intense.
You could really feel a collective gasp.
Yeah.
Especially, I remember that day very clearly.
It's also
just like pause.
It's also because you're so light on set. Like you don't carry the character with you. Like when you yell cut, you're Elle. You don't carry it. So walking on, I think everybody was like, "Is she still Elle?" Like it's still like okay. And so everybody was kind of on tiptoes. Didn't know, I think, how. And you know, then you were like, "It's me."
You're able to sort of turn it on and off pretty quickly, or I would hate to carry that all day.
I know. I think you have to. I don't know. That's kind of always how I've been. You wanna, you know. But we had Club 7E over here. We had a night we went, because we're in the bubble, you know, with the pandemics. We kind of all could hang out with each other, and Chloe threw a rager. The police were called because we were playing show tunes.
Yeah, yes. This is how intense Club 7E was.
We did have some
Show tunes. Show tunes in Savannah gets the police called.
A lot of musical theater nerds.
Yeah.
Stop looking this way.
And Norbert, I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, right, of course. Was Norbert singing his own songs, or?
Norbert
was
sang
doing some
quite a lot.
drumming on the garbage can, which then broke, and I had to replace it.
That's
They were
amazing.
fun moments. Yeah, we got to do our musical fantasy too.
Well, you have microphones right now. So.
Don't tempt him.
He wants to.
Not anymore.
Well, I can't believe we're already out of time. I could talk about this series for hours. Thank you for treating it with such dignity and respect. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for being here.